So you have a great product. What does it take to sell it? How do you convince somebody to buy the product? That's where delivering a product pitch that resonates matter. So in this session, we will look at what you need to consider when it comes to delivering a product pitch in a short period of time. Say, for example, you're meeting up a CEO or a CXO person in a prospect of yours, and how do you convince that person to consider taking a next step with your product? That's where the product pitch matters. First of all, what is a product pitch? So I just asked Gemini to define me or give me a definition of what is a product pitch. So this is what it came up with. A product platform pitch is a concise, persuasive presentation designed to showcase the value of a specific product or underlying platform to a targeted audience to generate interest and motivate them to take a desired action on the product platform. So there are some key words here. It has to be concise, it has to be persuasive, and you have to showcase the value, and and you have to target a particular audience and then spark or generate interest to take some desired action. So that's what a product pitch intends to be, correct? So my talk here is more tailored towards a software product, a SaaS product, software SaaS product, but you should be able to get some cues on how to do this pitch, even if it's not a software product. But think it through a software product when I go through the sections. So, what are the prerequisites for a product pitch? So, before you go and do this pitch, you have to have done with certain prerequisites, right? First of all, you have to have had a call with your prospect previously, and hardly ever you get a chance to talk to a CXO like person in the very first call. So it's good to take some time to do the technical discovery, and it doesn't have to be in a call as well. You can do your homework on a different way, do some web search, understand what the customer is looking for, and take a very good understanding of that, right? And so that's where the second point comes in, is know your customer's business problems and challenges. So unless you understand the customer's business domain, it's very hard to relate to their own problems. And again, know who you are pitching to, right? So if you're pitching to a CXO person or a head of the platform, a head of a product kind of a person, or an architect kind of a person, you need to know who you are pitching to. Based on that, you can tweak your pitch slightly as well. So build a tailored story, right? And as software product companies, you may have your organization may have a generic deck that you may have prepared to present to anyone who wants to understand about your product, but that might not work always, right? So you might have to do a little bit of a customization, and you can tailor it to your audience a little bit. So you have to make sure that you do that thing. And again, you have to be really mindful about time as well. Sometimes your prospects may give you like 30 minutes or 20 minutes or 45 minutes or 1 hour. You need to understand that time and adjust your talking speed, or how you can deliver the crux of what you want to say within that time. You need to manage that. So be mindful about that aspect. That's a crucial prerequisite when it comes to delivering a product page. And then of course you need to know about your product platform as well, and you need to know in and out about it. Of course, if they happen to cross check on various things, and at that point if you're stuck, uh, credibility might get jeopardized. So you need to be very good at your product features and functionalities and so forth. But this particular pitch is not going to be a feature walkthrough, as we are going to see in the next in a few moment time. But you need to know about your product, and unless you know about your product, and you can't relate well on what you are pitching. And this is not just for a platform product pitch. This is applicable for many other things, but in particular, what I want to say is what I call this as three P's. So you need to plan, you need to prepare, and you need to practice. You need to plan, right? Planning in the sense of whom you are delivering this pitch to, what collateral I should be having along with me. Maybe it's not just the deck, right? Sometimes, based on the questions, you might have to jump here and there a little bit, show them the website, show them some use cases, customer success stories that you may have in your website, and things like that. So, have those thing in mind, and that's where this planning comes into play. Maybe even a very short demo on of your product, and keep it up and running, all of that. And you shouldn't be like, okay, oh, you want to see the product, and at that time take a pause, and starting the product, all of that is going to have an interruption of your flow, right? So that's why you have to plan ahead, and think through what could possibly come up during this pitch session. And of course, preparing, right? So that preparation is important. And all what I mentioned previously on the planning step as to get materialized in the preparation step as well. And then obviously, before going and talking to your prospect, practice it a couple of times. And that practice makes you perfect when it comes to time management and your continuous flow of your story. And what makes a great product pitch? So let's look at a few things. And uh, and you need to be able to talk the value, and not the features of your product, right? So don't go and talk to your customers about or brag about the features that you have, and that those features make no sense for the customer. But rather, you show the value. The value should be on the lines of the return on investment, and how faster you can help the customer solve their problem, and get their solutions to the market faster with your product. That's what you should be focusing on, and that highly depends on the type of product that you are selling. So tailor the your pitch towards the value rather than the features. And you need to speak the customer's business language, right? If the customer is from the BFSI domain, the banking domain, you need to take examples from that domain and explain how your product fits in. And if it's in the insurance domain, if it's in the telco domain, you need to talk that particular language so that customers will find that very useful, and also will be able to relate to the functionalities and value that you're talking, because you're talking their business language. And you need to leverage the power of storytelling. And it should not be a monotonous thing on what values and features and functionalities that you bring, but maybe a storytelling, like, okay, take them through maybe a fictitious story, or even a real story of a customer success story that you have as part of your solution. So take them through that, and be outcome oriented as well, right? So and let them know what kind of outcome they will be having by utilizing your product. And again, that highly depends on the type of product that you're selling, but think through that aspect, and tailor to the customer's context. Again, that particular customer may be from the banking domain, and they are talking about open banking, and you are talking about completely revamping their backend. Might not make sense. So you have to understand this all of this comes from that initial technical discovery. So if they're talking about the open banking, address on that aspect. And then go to a telco, and they are talking about modernizing their internal operational support system and business support system. Usually they call OSS and BSS. And then you go and talk about the functional application. That may not make sense. Obviously, you can talk about that, you can definitely harp on that as a value addition, but you have to be context aware of what they are really looking at, and tailor your pitch based on that, right? And you have to be clear and confident in positioning as well. So if you sound doubtful about your product, maybe even for a split second, you sound a little bit doubtful and unconfident, then the customer will feel it. There are brilliant people mostly on the other side, right? And you should sound very confident on what you are saying. And when they ask, okay, can this be delivered with your product? And you know it is, and you sound doubtful, that sends a different signal. So you need to be very confident in what you are positioning. And what a product platform pitch is not. So it's, as I mentioned, it's not a feature walkthrough. So not many prospects will buy in the superiority of the features that you have, and maybe even you compare with one of your competitors, that may not be resounding, right? And again, depending on the audience as well, and if you're talking to a higher level decision maker, these feature walkthroughs are not going to work. And again, it's not a deep technical training session. Obviously, for a deep dive training session, you might require like a half a day, but usually a product pitch opportunity, you will only get about 30 minutes or maximum about an hour, right? So you need to be mindful about that, so you don't go in that path of doing a deep technical training session. And again, it's also not a product architecture deep dive. In software world, if you talk about the product architecture, how your product is architected underneath, is of no use to the customer, and what they are looking for is how your product can help with their architecture. So when I say this, I'm mainly referring to your product architecture, unless of course they ask about it, and you should not escape from that question if they ask, and you can answer that on a high level, but always come back to the value proposition that you are giving to the prospect. And again, it's not a generic product presentation as well, and usually product presentations will have the feature walkthroughs and stuff like that. And even if that product presentation has values, and it should not be generic, and this is where you need to understand the customer's context and the business, the problems they're trying to solve, and customizing that is important. And it's also not a one-way presentation. You keep on talking without pausing, and without making sure that they understand whether they have any questions. You need to make sure that you do that thing constantly. And it's not a generic scripted demo either. So a pitch is not a demo. You might get another opportunity to do a demo, and that has to come as one of your next steps. And make sure when you're doing a pitch, you don't do a generic scripted demo. It's okay to show your product, as I mentioned, as your preparation step. You can have your product up and running, so that you can show something very quick on one of the questions they may have. That's okay to do that thing, but that pitch session should not turn into a scripted demo. And it's also not a session to prove your expertise. Sometimes, as technical folks, some folks tend to kind of change into a mood where they kind of talk in a language that they showcase how talented they are, how good they are in their domain, and so forth. Yes, you are the expert in your domain, you should know about it, but this is not the place to show that ego, right? So make sure that you understand that. And again, you have to be pragmatic as well. This is not a place to solve and answer every little question that they may have, right? But again, as I mentioned, you need to know your product in and out, and when they ask some question, you should be able to answer. But there can be situations where you might not know certain details, and it's always okay to say you can come back to that, and give them a very meaningful answer, that the fact that you are talking make really sense, and the fact that you mentioned that you will come back is in the details. And understanding your audience, this is one of the crucial aspects, right? You have to tailor your pitch and content specific for that audience, and your message and talking points as to be aligned with that recipient persona, and address those distinct concerns in those individual groups. So you may be talking to a CXO person, and then you had to focus on the strategy and the return on investment and the business impact that you can bring in by letting them use our product. And if it's an architect kind of a person, yes, the discussion may tend to go in the lines of some architecture, but again, remember, it's not about your product architecture, but their solutions architecture, their enterprise architecture is what we are talking about. Again, at that level, don't go deep dive into how individual network connections and ports and whatnot work, but rather the value and what they value. Things like the scalability, things like the integrity, and so forth, right? So tailor your talk based on that. You may be talking to a product manager, and then mostly your language should be their language, basically on the domain language, like the banking, healthcare, and so forth. And if it's a platform engineer, DevOps engineer, or a developer that you're talking to, again, you have to tailor your pitch accordingly. But remember, mostly if it's a pitch that you are doing, in my opinion, it has to be for a very senior person in that organization. If you're talking to a DevOps engineer or a developer and doing a platform pitch, there's something wrong. That maybe it's not a pitch that you need to do to them. Maybe a demo, right? It has come past that level, and then adjust and tell this to your salespeople that. Maybe this is not a pitch, it's rather a demonstration, and adjust it accordingly. And you have to expect the unexpected when it comes to doing a platform or a product page. For example, you might get very areas or questions that we don't address, like you don't address in your product line. And if somebody asks a question that maybe something missing in your organizational product, what do you answer? Right? What do you tell at that point? Is it in your roadmap? Is it something that you don't cater? And why you don't cater that? And you need to have a very pragmatic answer. You need to be expecting these questions as well. And uh, and also there can be situations in customer taking your discussion into a tangent that you didn't prepare for, like completely off the topic. And then how do you make sure that you bring them back into the right track, and get the discussion going on the subject that you came prepared for? And this is all important in your discovery level. When you are setting up this particular meeting, you have to be prepared with, or have done your or shared your agenda and what's you're going to talk about in these sessions. All of that expectation should have been set previously. Then the likelihood of taking this discussion into a different tangent gets very slim. But it's always possible, and because you never know who's attending on the other side, right? And prospects sometimes throw a FUD at your organization as well. So then how do you make sure that you attack that? And professional responses: define an agenda prior to the meeting. Keep your calm. Do not be defensive. See if the said area is in your roadmap. It's okay to say we'll check and get back, right? And what questions to ask and not to ask, right? So there are things that you can ask, and there are certain questions that you should not be asked in general, right? So these are not hard line yes no type of things that we're talking about here, but in general you can ask about the impact questions, and things like what happens if this particular, no, they might come to you with a problem, and you can ask, what if you don't deliver this thing in the next 6 months time? You can ask such a question. You can ask a priority question, like for example, they may have multiple problems to solve, and then you can ask, which of these problems are of high priority, which one is the the very next thing that you are intending to solve, right? So not all organizations will expect all the problems to be solved at the same time. So it's okay to ask that kind of a question. And outcome oriented questions you should be asking always. So for example, what would the success look like for you in 6 months from now, right? And by doing this thing, what are you going to accomplish? Maybe that's the productivity, maybe it's more revenue, maybe it's ease of use, or higher market share, or whatever, right? So that understanding is important for you to understand as well. And you can always ask next step questions after this pitch presentation. You should be asking them what's the possible next step. Like we're going to touch on this in the next at the final slide of this deck, and I'll come back to that. Yeah, so you should not be leaving this particular meeting without properly understanding what's the next steps are. And what you shouldn't be asking, right? You should not ask budget questions. This is not a place to ask, unless, of course, the customer opens it up and they say, okay, they are tight on their budget, and they are kind of taking the discussion towards that. Again, I will strongly recommend not to even, show much of a concern about such statements in the pitch presentation, but you can leave that to a salesperson if you're a technical person who's doing this, right? And so don't ask budget questions in general. And again, don't ask them deep technical questions. For example, in the software world, there can be lots and lots of technical details that they may be having. For example, they may be having a security compromise in the organization. They want to harden their security practices and so forth. And again, that may be a higher level statement. It would be pointless to ask in response to that statement, um, what cryptographic algorithms you are using, and chances are high that nobody would know the answer to that, right. And same thing related to questions challenging their internal gaps. Obviously, you should not be throwing FUD at them as well. For example, showcasing the fact that they should have done this thing 5 years ago, and a lot of other organizations are doing. You being such a big organization haven't done is a big surprise. Kind of statements is not going to fly, right? So you need to make sure that you understand that as well. And also, don't ask questions that you definitely know that they will not have answers for. They're just about starting a new project because they want to solve something, and then you are asking about what's the anticipated traffic, or what's the anticipated number of, let's say if it's an insurance company, you're asking a question on how many insurance claims you're expecting to have in the next 1 or 2 years. It's okay to ask some types of business related questions, anticipated questions, but like TPS values, and what's the message size, what's the memory level that you're trying to grow, all of that are type of questions that you definitely know they might not have answers. Don't tend to ask those kind of questions. And then finally, drive the next steps. So what could possibly be your next step? Your next step could be a tailored deep dive session. So this is where you really want to go into showing your product. And again, this session, we can maybe do another session on this, on what exactly you can do here, but it has to be a deep dive session. You can also possibly look into an architecture workshop, and meeting the customer face to face, and do a use case driven demonstration as well, and show where to download your software. So I told you my this particular presentation is more tailored on to doing a software pitch, software product pitch. So in that case, you should show them where to get that thing. If it's a SaaS offering, how to sign up, all of that, right? And maybe provide a sandbox access to them, right? So you might want to ask them, look, try this out, but you definitely know they're busy, and you can leave a sandbox to them and say, look, this is already there. There are some examples you can try out. If it's a CXO, you can ask him or her to get their team to try this out, because it's already ever ready and it's there, and you can leave with that, and maybe share a selected set of collaterals. And always is a good thing for them to get more interested in your product. And these collaterals has to be very selected. It should not be like extensive documentation and the likes. Maybe you can talk or share a customer talk, or customer testimonial that you have, and or maybe even connect the CXO with one of your customers. That could be another possible next step, or offer them a POC, or a quick start program or evaluation kind of support if you have in your organization. And there can be many more. You can be innovative about these kind of next steps as well. So look into that, and this is how you deliver a product platform pitch. You have to be very concise, you have to be very clear, and leave your meeting or the pitch with clear next steps on how we want to drive this to the next level. And that's all I have to say on this particular session. If you have any comments, please put down in the comments, and I would love to hear your feedback. And I'll see you in another video very soon. Thank you very much.